Picture this, a god who ruled with perfect wisdom, loved by all his people, only to be brutally betrayed by his own brother. Sounds like the plot of a twisted thriller, right? Well, welcome to ancient Egyptian mythology, where family drama reaches cosmic proportions. Meet Osiris, the green-skinned god who became ruler of the dead, father of pharaohs, and the ultimate symbol of resurrection. His story has everything: divine romance, sibling rivalry, magical resurrection, and a quest for justice that spans the afterlife. But Osiris wasn't just another mythological character collecting dust in ancient temples. His story shaped an entire civilization's understanding of life, death, and what comes after. For over 3,000 years, Egyptians looked to Osiris for hope that death wasn't the end, just a really long intermission. Talk about job security. And here's the kicker. His influence didn't stop at Egypt's borders. This green god's story of death and rebirth echoed through Greek mysteries, Roman cults, and even influenced early Christianity. So buckle up for a journey through divine kingdoms, brutal betrayals, and magical resurrections. We're about to explore how one god's tragic death became humanity's greatest hope for eternal life. Trust me, after hearing Osiris's story, you'll never look at family gatherings the same way again. Our story begins in the cosmic realm, where gods were born from the very elements of creation. Osiris emerged from the union of Geb, the earth god who literally was the ground beneath everyone's feet, and Nut, the sky goddess who arched over the world like a star-spangled blanket. Imagine your parents being the actual earth and sky. Now that's what you call having a grounded upbringing with your head in the clouds. Osiris wasn't an only child in this divine family. He had 3 siblings who would shape his destiny in ways both wonderful and terrible. There was Set, the god of chaos and the desert, basically the embodiment of everything harsh and unpredictable. Then came Isis, the goddess of magic and wisdom, who would become Osiris's beloved wife and greatest ally. Finally, there was Nephthys, the goddess of mourning and transition, who played the role of the supportive sister-in-law. From the moment of his birth, Osiris stood out among the gods. While Set embodied wild chaos and unpredictability, Osiris represented order, fertility, and civilization. He was like the responsible older brother who actually did his homework while his sibling was out causing trouble. Ancient Egyptians depicted him with green skin, the color of growing plants and fertile soil, symbolizing his connection to life and renewal. But Osiris wasn't content to just lounge around in divine luxury. He had a mission that would change humanity forever. He descended to Earth with a revolutionary idea: teach humans how to live better lives. Before Osiris arrived, people were basically wandering around, probably eating whatever they could find and living in caves. Not exactly the height of civilization. Osiris introduced agriculture to humanity, showing them how to plant crops and harvest grain. Suddenly, people could stop being nomadic hunter-gatherers and start building permanent settlements. He taught them to make bread and beer, 2 items that immediately made him humanity's favorite god. I mean, who doesn't appreciate the inventor of happy hour? Beyond just food and drink, Osiris established laws and moral codes. He showed humans how to worship the gods properly and live in harmony with divine order, a concept the Egyptians called Ma'at. This wasn't just about following rules, it was about maintaining cosmic balance. Think of Ma'at as the universe's operating system, and Osiris was its chief programmer. The Egyptians believed that before Osiris, the world was chaotic and uncivilized. His arrival marked the beginning of the Golden Age, when humans learned to live as civilized beings rather than savage animals. He didn't rule through fear or force, but through wisdom and benevolence. People followed him because he genuinely made their lives better. Imagine that, a politician who actually delivered on their promises. As Osiris established his earthly kingdom, he embodied everything the Egyptians valued most: justice, fertility, and divine order. He became the template for ideal kingship that future pharaohs would try to emulate. But here's where things get interesting, and by interesting, I mean dramatically complicated. While Osiris was busy being the perfect ruler, his brother Set was watching from the sidelines, and jealousy was starting to eat away at him like a divine case of sibling rivalry gone nuclear. Under Osiris's reign, Egypt transformed into a paradise that would make modern utopian novels look like rough drafts. Fields stretched endlessly along the Nile, heavy with grain that seemed to grow almost magically. The river itself flowed with perfect timing, flooding the land each year with nutrient-rich silt that turned the desert into a green oasis. It was like having the world's most reliable irrigation system, courtesy of divine management. Osiris didn't rule alone in this golden age. His wife Isis stood beside him as the perfect divine partner. Think of them as the ultimate power couple, but with actual godly powers. Isis brought her mastery of magic and healing to complement Osiris's gifts of agriculture and law. Together, they created a civilization where people lived in harmony, crops flourished, and everyone seemed to have figured out the secret to happiness. The cities that rose during this time were marvels of ancient engineering and beauty. Markets bustled with traders selling grain, pottery, and crafts. Temples rose toward the sky, their walls covered in intricate hieroglyphs that told stories of divine favor. Children played in streets that were actually safe, while their parents worked in fields that never seemed to fail. If ancient Egypt had a tourism board, this would have been their golden promotional period. But it wasn't just about material prosperity. Osiris established a system of justice that actually worked. Judges made fair decisions, criminals faced appropriate consequences, and disputes were settled through reason rather than violence. People trusted their leaders because those leaders genuinely cared about their well-being. Revolutionary concept, right? The agricultural innovations Osiris introduced went far beyond basic farming. He taught people to read the stars and predict the Nile's floods, turning agriculture into a science. Farmers learned to rotate crops, manage irrigation channels, and store surplus grain for lean years. Egypt became the ancient world's breadbasket, exporting food to neighboring regions while maintaining abundance at home. Isis contributed her own revolutionary ideas to their shared kingdom. She taught women the arts of weaving, medicine, and child-rearing. Under her guidance, Egyptian women enjoyed more rights and freedoms than women in most other ancient cultures. She also developed healing practices that combined herbal medicine with magical rituals, basically becoming the world's first holistic healthcare provider. The divine couple's influence extended beyond practical matters into the realm of spirituality and culture. They established festivals that celebrated the cycles of nature, the harvest, and the renewal of life. These weren't just religious obligations, but genuine celebrations where communities came together to share food, music, and stories. Ancient Egyptians actually looked forward to their religious observances. Architecture flourished under their rule as people built not just functional structures but beautiful ones. Temples became works of art, with columns that mimicked papyrus plants and walls that told visual stories of divine myths. Even ordinary homes featured decorative elements that reflected the prosperity and artistic sensibilities of the age. Trade networks expanded as Egypt's reputation for stability and prosperity spread. Merchants arrived from distant lands, bringing exotic goods and new ideas. Gold, ivory, and precious stones flowed into Egyptian markets, while Egyptian grain, linen, and crafted goods traveled throughout the known world. Osiris had essentially created the ancient equivalent of an economic powerhouse. Yet beneath this idyllic surface, shadows were beginning to gather. Set, the god of chaos and storms, watched his brother's success with growing resentment. While Osiris basked in universal love and admiration, Set found himself increasingly marginalized and forgotten. The desert winds he controlled seemed harsh and unwelcome compared to the gentle breezes that blessed Osiris's fertile lands. And in the back of his mind, a dark plan was beginning to form, one that would shatter this golden age forever. But for now, the people of Egypt lived in blissful ignorance of the storm that was brewing in their divine family. The seeds of destruction were planted in the very soil of paradise. Set, God of chaos and the desert, had spent years watching his brother's success while his own domains, the harsh wastelands and violent storms, seemed increasingly irrelevant. Every temple built to honor Osiris, every harvest festival celebrating his gifts, every prayer of gratitude felt like a personal insult to Set. Jealousy wasn't just eating away at him, it was consuming him like a wildfire in dry grass. Set's resentment went deeper than simple sibling rivalry. In the cosmic order that Osiris represented, Set's role as chaos was necessary but never celebrated. People feared storms and droughts. They didn't throw parties for them. While Osiris got credit for life and fertility, Set was blamed for death and destruction. It's like being the universe's designated villain while your brother gets to be the hero. Not exactly a recipe for brotherly love. The breaking point came during one of Egypt's greatest festivals, celebrating the Nile's annual flood. As Osiris received praise and worship from thousands of grateful people, Set realized he couldn't take it anymore. That night, he conceived a plan so devious, so perfectly crafted, that it would have impressed even the most cunning villains. He decided to throw his brother the ultimate surprise party, one that would be his last. Set began by commissioning the most beautiful chest ever created. This wasn't just furniture, it was a masterpiece of Egyptian craftsmanship. Skilled artisans covered it in gold and precious gems, decorating it with intricate designs that told stories of divine power. But here's the twist. Set had it built to exactly match Osiris's measurements. It was like commissioning a custom-fitted trap disguised as the ultimate luxury item. The chest was so magnificent that word of its beauty spread throughout the divine realm. Gods and goddesses whispered about this incredible creation, wondering who could possibly deserve such a treasure. Set smiled and let the anticipation build. He knew exactly who it was meant for, and they were all about to find out in the most shocking way possible. Set then announced a grand banquet to celebrate Egyptian prosperity. He invited not just the gods, but also 72 mortal conspirators who had their own reasons for resenting Osiris's perfect rule. The guest list read like a who's who of divine and mortal society, all gathering in Set's magnificent palace overlooking the Nile. Even Osiris, trusting and generous as always, accepted his brother's invitation without suspicion. The banquet was spectacular beyond imagination. Tables groaned under the weight of exotic foods, wine flowed like water, and entertainment filled every moment. Musicians played, dancers performed, and storytellers regaled guests with tales of heroic adventures. Set played the perfect host, making sure everyone felt welcome and relaxed. Osiris enjoyed himself thoroughly, pleased to see his brother finally joining in the celebrations that defined their golden age. As the evening reached its peak, Set called for attention. He gestured dramatically toward the magnificent chest, which had been prominently displayed throughout the feast. "My friends," he announced with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, "I have a little game for us. This beautiful chest will belong to whoever fits inside it perfectly." The crowd gasped in admiration. It seemed like such a generous, playful gesture from their host. One by one, the guests tried to fit inside the ornate box. Some were too tall, others too wide, a few too short. Each attempt brought laughter and good-natured teasing from the crowd. The chest seemed impossibly specific in its dimensions, as if it had been made for one person alone. And of course it had been. Set had planned every inch of this moment with meticulous precision. Finally, amid encouraging cheers from the crowd, Osiris stepped forward to try his luck. The moment he lay down inside the chest, it fit him perfectly, like it had been waiting for him all along. The crowd erupted in applause and laughter, celebrating Osiris's good fortune, but their joy quickly turned to horror as Set's conspirators rushed forward and slammed the lid shut with a sound like thunder. Set's true nature exploded forth as he and his allies secured the chest with chains and molten lead. The beautiful golden box became a death trap, sealing Osiris inside with no hope of escape. The god who had brought life to the world was suffocating in darkness, betrayed by his own brother in front of a crowd that had moments before been celebrating with him. Talk about a party that took a dark turn. Without hesitation, Set and his conspirators hurled the sealed chest into the Nile. The river that had been Osiris's greatest blessing now became his tomb, carrying him away from the kingdom he had built and the people he had loved. As the chest disappeared into the dark waters, Set proclaimed himself the new ruler of Egypt. The Golden Age was over, replaced by the harsh rule of chaos and fear. The first murder in divine history had been committed, and nothing would ever be the same again. When Isis discovered Osiris's death, she didn't just cry. She unleashed the most epic quest in Egyptian mythology. Picture this: the most powerful goddess in Egypt, wings spread wide, searching every corner of the known world. She wasn't going to let her husband stay dead, not on her watch. The goddess of magic had some serious tricks up her sleeve. Isis's first challenge was finding all the pieces. Set had scattered Osiris across Egypt like the world's most gruesome jigsaw puzzle. She transformed into a bird, specifically a kite, and flew over rivers, deserts, and cities. Her keen eyes spotted each hidden piece. Talk about having a bird's-eye view of the situation. Local fishermen probably thought they were seeing things. The search took her from the delta to the southern borders of Egypt. Each piece she found, she carefully preserved with her magic. Isis wasn't working alone, though. Her sister Nephthys felt terrible about her husband Set's actions. She joined the quest, bringing her own magical abilities. Together they made quite the supernatural detective duo. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, became their unlikely ally. He'd been hanging around the edges of this family drama, but now he stepped up big time. Anubis invented the art of mummification specifically to help Isis. He taught her the sacred rituals of preservation. Without his expertise, Osiris would have stayed scattered forever. But here's where it gets really interesting. Isis found every piece except one. The fish in the Nile had eaten Osiris's, well, let's just say his most essential masculine part. Isis had to get creative. She crafted a replacement using her magic and clay. Sometimes you've got to improvise when saving your husband from eternal death. The resurrection process was like nothing the world had ever seen. Isis hovered over Osiris's reassembled body, her wings creating sacred winds. She chanted spells that made the very air shimmer with power. Her magic was so intense that even the gods stopped what they were doing to watch. You could practically feel the electricity in the air. As Isis worked her magic, something miraculous happened. Life began flowing back into Osiris's body. His skin regained its color. His heart started beating again. But this wasn't going to be a permanent comeback tour. Osiris could only stay alive long enough for one very important task. The clock was ticking. In those precious moments of resurrection, Isis and Osiris conceived their child, Horus. Talk about making every second count. This wasn't just any ordinary conception either. The magical energy surrounding them was so powerful that their son was destined for greatness. Horus would inherit both his father's divine authority and his mother's magical abilities. But Osiris couldn't stay in the land of the living. His time was up, and he had to journey to the underworld. Before leaving, he promised Isis he would guide their son from beyond. Their goodbye was heartbreaking, the last kiss between the god of fertility and the goddess of magic. Even the Nile seemed to weep that day. Isis now faced single motherhood with a divine twist. She had to raise the future pharaoh while keeping him hidden from Set. She retreated to the marshes of the Nile Delta, where thick papyrus plants provided cover. There, she would nurture Horus until he was strong enough to reclaim his father's throne. No pressure, right? The resurrection had transformed Osiris completely. He became the first mummy, wrapped in the finest linen and preserved for eternity. His green skin symbolized rebirth and fertility. From his throne in the underworld, he could judge the souls of the dead. Death hadn't defeated him, it had given him a whole new career. Isis's love had literally conquered death. Her determination and magical power had brought back the impossible. Egyptian women would pray to her for centuries, asking for her strength in their own struggles. She'd proven that with enough love and magic, you could overcome anything, even your psycho brother-in-law's murder plot. The whole resurrection story became the template for Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife. If Isis could bring back Osiris, then maybe death wasn't really the end. Maybe everyone could have a second chance. This hope would drive Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. Not bad for a day's work. But wait until you hear what Horus did when he grew up. This kid was about to start the ultimate revenge story. And Osiris? He was just getting started in his new role as the underworld's top judge. The family drama was far from over. Osiris's new job came with quite the career change. Gone were the days of ruling sunny Egypt. Now he presided over the underworld's court system. Picture the ultimate judge sitting on a throne in a vast hall filled with the souls of the dead. His green skin glowed in the eternal twilight. Every soul that died had to face him for the final verdict. No appeals court in this system. The underworld wasn't some dark, scary place like you might imagine. Under Osiris's rule, it became a reflection of the perfect Egypt he'd once governed. There were fields of reeds where blessed souls could farm forever. Rivers flowed with crystal-clear water. The sun god Ra visited daily on his journey through the night. It was basically ancient Egypt's version of paradise, complete with eternal vacation vibes. Osiris didn't judge souls alone. He had a whole supernatural court system set up. 42 gods served as his jury, each representing different aspects of morality. The deceased had to recite the negative confessions, basically a list of all the bad things they claimed they never did. "I have not stolen grain" was a popular one. Lying under oath had serious consequences here. The most famous part of Osiris's court was the weighing of the heart. The god Anubis would place the deceased's heart on one side of a scale. On the other side sat the feather of Ma'at, representing truth and justice. If your heart was lighter than the feather, congratulations, eternal paradise awaited. If not, well, let's just say there was a monster named Ammit waiting nearby with very sharp teeth. Meanwhile, back in the land of the living, baby Horus was growing up fast. Isis had hidden him in the Delta marshes, but Set's spies were everywhere. One day, a scorpion stung little Horus nearly to death. Isis's magical healing saved him, but she knew time was running out. Her son needed to grow strong quickly if he was going to survive Set's reign of terror. Isis taught Horus everything about kingship and magic. He learned to transform into a falcon, soaring high above Egypt to survey his future kingdom. She told him stories about his father's golden reign and Set's betrayal. With each tale, Horus's determination grew stronger. This kid was developing some serious daddy issues, the good kind that motivate you to seek justice. When Horus reached adulthood, he was ready to challenge Set for the throne. But this wasn't going to be settled with a simple arm wrestling match. The conflict between Horus and Set lasted 80 years. They battled in every form imaginable, as men, as hippos, as various other animals. Set even tried to, let's say, compromise Horus in ways that would make modern soap operas blush. Different times indeed. Throughout this epic conflict, Osiris served as Horus's spiritual advisor. From his underworld throne, he sent messages and guidance to his son. Sometimes he appeared in dreams, sometimes through oracles. Osiris had learned patience in death. He knew that justice would eventually triumph. Plus, he was pretty busy with his day job judging souls. The gods finally got tired of the never-ending Horus versus Set drama. They held a divine trial that made modern court cases look speedy. Various gods testified for both sides. Some clever legal maneuvering happened. Ancient Egyptian lawyers were apparently just as creative as modern ones. Finally, the court ruled in Horus's favor. Set got exiled to the desert where he could only cause sandstorms and bad weather. Osiris's story revolutionized Egyptian funeral practices. Every pharaoh wanted the full Osiris treatment when they died. Mummification became an art form. Tombs were built like underworld palaces. The wealthy spent fortunes on elaborate burial preparations. Death went from being feared to being the ultimate luxury vacation package, if you could afford it. The common people couldn't afford royal mummification, but they still wanted Osiris's protection. They created small figurines called shabtis to serve them in the afterlife. They painted scenes from Osiris's story on their coffins. Even a simple farmer could hope for resurrection if they lived a good life. Osiris had democratized death. Everyone deserved a chance at eternal happiness. But Osiris's influence was just getting started. His story would spread far beyond Egypt's borders, inspiring other cultures and religions. The idea of a god who dies and comes back to life was about to become a major theme in human civilization. You might recognize some similar stories from other traditions. Resurrection myths have serious staying power. Osiris wasn't just a mythological figure. He was the superstar of ancient Egyptian religion. Every major city had temples dedicated to him. His main cult center was Abydos, which became ancient Egypt's most sacred pilgrimage site. Egyptians would travel hundreds of miles just to leave offerings at his shrine. Think of it as the ancient world's version of a religious road trip, complete with souvenir shopping. The annual Osiris mysteries were like ancient Egypt's biggest festival. These weren't just religious ceremonies. They were full theatrical productions that lasted for days. Priests would reenact Osiris's death, dismemberment, and resurrection using elaborate costumes and props. The whole community participated, from pharaoh to farmer. It was part religious service, part Broadway show, with way more audience participation. The Djed pillar became Osiris's signature symbol. This tall column with horizontal bars represented his backbone, literally the spine that held up the world. Pharaohs wore Djed amulets for strength. Temples featured massive Djed columns in their architecture. Even today, you can spot this symbol in Egyptian art. It's like ancient Egypt's version of a logo that never went out of style. Osiris's connection to the Nile's annual flood made him essential to Egyptian survival. When the river rose each year, bringing fertile soil to the fields, Egyptians saw Osiris's resurrection in action. The green plants that sprouted from the black mud were like his body coming back to life. Farmers would literally plant Osiris gardens, small beds of grain shaped like the god, to ensure good harvests. Talk about agricultural insurance. Every pharaoh claimed to be the living Horus, which automatically made them Osiris's son. This wasn't just political propaganda, it was the foundation of royal authority. When a pharaoh died, he became Osiris, joining the god in the underworld. The new pharaoh then became Horus, continuing the divine cycle. It was like a spiritual game of musical chairs that lasted for thousands of years. The priests of Osiris developed incredibly complex rituals around his worship. They had specific chants for every hour of the day. Special offerings of bread, beer, and meat were presented at precise times. The opening of the mouth ceremony was performed on mummies to help them speak in the afterlife. These guys made modern religious ceremonies look casual by comparison. Osiris's temples were architectural marvels. The Temple of Seti-Nathim at Abydos features some of the most beautiful hieroglyphic carvings ever created. The colors are so vivid they look like they were painted yesterday. Artists depicted Osiris's story in stunning detail across massive wall surfaces. These weren't just decorations. They were ancient Egypt's version of graphic novels, telling the god's story for eternity. Women especially connected with Osiris through his relationship with Isis. Their love story became the template for ideal marriage. Egyptian couples would invoke their names during wedding ceremonies. Pregnant women prayed to Isis for protection, remembering how she hid baby Horus from danger. The divine family represented everything Egyptians valued: loyalty, love, and the triumph of good over evil. The wealthy competed to build the most elaborate tombs near Osiris's sacred sites. These weren't just burial places. They were eternal homes designed to impress the god of the dead. Some tombs had multiple chambers, painted walls, and enough supplies to last several lifetimes. Rich Egyptians basically tried to take it all with them, and Osiris was their hoped-for landlord in the afterlife. Even Egyptian medicine incorporated Osiris's story. Doctors used his myth to explain healing and recovery. They saw illness as a kind of temporary death that could be overcome with the right treatment. Medical papyri contain spells invoking Osiris's resurrection power. Ancient Egyptian physicians were apparently the first to combine medicine with mythology, and it seemed to work pretty well for them. Here's where things get really fascinating. Osiris didn't stay put in Egypt. His story spread across the ancient Mediterranean like wildfire. Greek and Roman traders brought tales of this death-defying god back home. Soon, Osiris temples popped up in places like Athens and Rome. Talk about going viral before the internet existed. The Greeks couldn't resist adding their own spin to Osiris's story. They saw striking similarities between him and their own gods. Dionysus, the wine god who also died and came back to life, suddenly seemed like Osiris's Greek cousin. Adonis, another resurrection hero, got the same treatment. Ancient people loved their resurrection stories. Apparently, coming back from the dead never goes out of style. But wait, there's more. Early Christians noticed something familiar about Osiris's tale. A divine figure who dies, gets resurrected, and offers eternal life to followers? Sound familiar? Scholars have debated for centuries whether Osiris influenced Christian theology. The parallels are undeniable: death, resurrection, judgment of souls, and promises of afterlife. Even if the connection isn't direct, both stories tap into humanity's deepest hopes about conquering death. Archaeological evidence tells an amazing story of cultural mixing. Excavations across the Mediterranean reveal Osiris statues in Roman villas and Greek temples. Papyrus scrolls from Alexandria show Egyptian priests teaching Osiris mysteries to foreign students. One fascinating discovery in Pompeii showed an Osiris shrine right next to a Roman household altar. Ancient people weren't picky about their gods. If Osiris worked, they welcomed him in. The mystery religions of the Greco-Roman world absolutely loved Osiris. These secret cults promised initiates special knowledge about death and rebirth. The Osiris mysteries became incredibly popular among Romans, seeking spiritual meaning beyond traditional state religion. Imagine ancient Romans gathering in underground chambers, learning Egyptian secrets about conquering death. Pretty cool secret society, right? Hellenistic texts reveal how Osiris adapted to new cultures while keeping his core identity. Writers like Plutarch documented Egyptian myths for Greek audiences. They translated hieroglyphic stories into philosophical treatises. Osiris became a symbol of cosmic order and divine justice that transcended national boundaries. He was becoming a truly international god. The Roman Empire's vast trade networks carried Osiris worship to Britain, Germany, and North Africa. Soldiers stationed on distant frontiers built small Osiris shrines. Merchants traveling the Silk Road carried amulets bearing his image. Even barbarian tribes beyond Rome's borders knew stories about the Egyptian god who conquered death. Osiris had achieved something most ancient deities never managed: global recognition. Why does Osiris still fascinate us today? His story addresses timeless human concerns about mortality, justice, and renewal. Modern movies, books, and games continue drawing inspiration from his myth. From Marvel's Moon Knight to academic conferences on ancient religion, Osiris remains relevant. Maybe it's because deep down, we all want to believe that death isn't the end, that love and determination can overcome anything, even the grave itself. Osiris's journey from Egyptian god-king to global symbol of resurrection shows the incredible power of storytelling. His tale of betrayal, love, death, and rebirth has captivated humanity for over 4,000 years. Through kingdoms rising and falling, through countless cultural changes, Osiris endures. He represents something eternal in the human spirit, our refusal to accept that death has the final word. What makes Osiris truly remarkable isn't just his individual story, but how it connects to the broader tapestry of human mythology. His influence echoes through Greek mysteries, Roman religion, and even modern spiritual movements. He reminds us that ancient people weren't so different from us. They faced the same fears about mortality and the same hopes for justice and renewal. In studying Osiris, we're really studying ourselves. If Osiris's story has sparked your curiosity, there's so much more Egyptian mythology to explore. Dive into the epic battle between Horus and Set, discover Isis's incredible magical powers, or learn about Anubis's role as guide to the afterlife. Visit your local museum's Egyptian collection. Seeing actual artifacts brings these ancient stories to life. Many museums now offer virtual tours where you can explore tomb paintings and read hieroglyphic accounts of Osiris's adventures. Here's my challenge for you. Think about the stories that shape your own culture. What modern myths address the same themes as Osiris? The struggle between good and evil, the power of love to overcome obstacles, the hope that death isn't the end. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. If this deep dive into Egyptian mythology fascinated you, hit that like button and subscribe for more ancient adventures. Next time, we'll explore another legendary figure whose story changed the world. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. You won't.